Good afternoon, sports fans. My name is Scott Schertzen, alongside Mr. JD Walker and, of course, Mr. Obi Spencer. And welcome to Spangler Sports World Sports Network on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. As always, make sure to rate and download the Zingo TV app. The app is free, so you can't beat the price, and they welcome the input. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Roku Sticks, Amazon Fire Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. And a happy good Tuesday afternoon to you if you're on the East Coast. A happy good Tuesday morning to you if you're in Hawaii, or a happy possibly Wednesday morning, depending if you're on the other side of the planet. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not good, not happy.
Tell us about this.
My sporting life is very
no
miserable.
That you were bothered by something. Please,
just the sporting life. I'm sure we'll cover a lot of them. But things are ugly here in Philadelphia, and it's not made any better by your union, who I'm sure you're going to celebrate. Not your union, sorry, your NYFC, that I'm sure you're going to celebrate and talk about today. But
we're going to talk a little MLS today, which we didn't put a lot of time in that. But yes, you have some F words for F1. You can't say the F words on air, but you can say the formula in the F1. But we will get to that probably first and foremost once I find out how Mr. Walker's doing.
I'm doing fine. Kind of at the point where I'm waiting for the NFL playoffs to start, as most of the fans of our teams are.
Exactly.
Eagles still have a chance, though.
The annual tradition of rooting for some other team than your own. Yes, I'm well aware of that feeling. But Obi, I'm curious about this. I know that there was a little bit of a few persnickety comments, shall we say, in the world of Formula One. You and Tom Karwacki, I think, shared a little conversation in some regards too. But why don't we kick this off in this case with your thoughts, sir? Go ahead, go for it.
So I'd like to just make these comments. When I started Formula One watching this season, this is my introduction. There's a lot about this sport that I still don't know, still don't understand it. Yes, me and Mr. Karwacki had a conversation aside. He gave me a little bit more information to help to solidify my opinion, but it doesn't change my opinion. So this season came down. They made apparently some changes in the offseason, and you had two guys who were way better than everybody else in Hamilton and Verstappen. It was they say 1A and 1B and everybody else. And these two guys were racing all season. And I will say most of it felt like, I didn't keep track with a paper and pencil, but it felt like more of the 50-50 calls did go Hamilton's way over the season than Verstappen. It gets down to this last race and they're tied. Like, this is as great as it can be. Oh my goodness, these two guys are great. We've watched them all season. The race starts and Verstappen pushes Hamilton off the track. Maybe they decide that he did, and Hamilton is off and running in this race. Again, I don't know about that call. I could have seen it going either way. Hamilton could have given the spot back. But for the next 52 laps of racing, there is no question on that day who the better driver is and who has the better car on that day. Hamilton keeps gaining on Verstappen. Verstappen gets new tires. Hamilton keeps gaining on Verstappen, but Verstappen puts in more newer new tires. Hamilton doesn't. Hamilton they say Verstappen needs to make a 0.8 seconds a lap. This is at about lap 30 of 55, and he makes up 1.2 seconds, 1 second, 0.8 seconds, 0.6 seconds, and then stops making up ground. So the first 4 laps, he was there. He might have been able to catch him by the end, and then he doesn't, and he starts to lose ground. His team has given up. As a matter of fact, they take Perez, his team partner, out of the race. You're retired for the season. Thank you very much. This race is over. And then there's an accident, and they go to a yellow car, the safety car. And this is where me as a new fan, I don't understand all the rules. I've been reading, still trying to understand. It definitely seems like they didn't follow any given set of rules. And they set it up. Literally, they decide, we're going to just have a 1-lap race to determine the championship after Hamilton has dominated the race, all race. And they set it up in a way that was definitely not to Hamilton's favor. Verstappen went on to win. I don't have a real horse in the race. I'm brand new to the sport. I think that in some ways, deciding the race on a coin flip or deciding the season on a coin flip almost made sense because of how good they both were all season. And it was probably there was going to be luck involved in the outcome because they were so close. But it really felt like people there maneuvered for this one lap finale to make it a cool one lap finale. But you also knew it was one guy in his car at his prime and the other guy with old tires that didn't stand a chance. And it felt manipulated. So as a new fan, I felt manipulated. Now, Tom and I talked a little bit. He did explain part of what happened, why it happened, to help me feel a little better. But it still felt like if you wanted to manipulate it, you could have manipulated it, but then manipulated it so they had a fair start because one guy was so much better on that particular day that I felt that because that was the last day, he deserved the championship. You asked me over the course of the whole season, sure, let's say Verstappen they were equals. So it doesn't really matter. So it was a great sport to get into. Very excited I did. Looking forward to next season. But as a new fan to the F1 world, I am telling you left a bizarre taste in my mouth. That's it. That's my rant. Congratulations, Max Verstappen. You were certainly equal to the other guy, without a doubt.
This was Verstappen's first title, I believe, whereas Hamilton has won multiple times. They were so dominant. Just taking a quick look at the standings here, out of what appears to be 22 total races in the looking at the quick point standings, out of 22 races, 18 of them either Verstappen or Hamilton won.
Yep.
Verstappen won 10, Hamilton won 8, and then there was 4 other ones, one each for Bottas, Perez, Ricciardo, and Ocon. Yeah. So the entire season, it was so close to the point where penalties had where fines and penalties of respective drivers were also a deciding factor. Like to the point that I remember Lawrence being on a show a few months back where he said something then about the outsized influence that some of these penalties would have on the final point standings, and he was right.
He was dead right, yeah. Never underestimate the kid's knowledge when it comes to this sport.
There was 2. So if you get when you put a new engine in your car, you take a penalty on your starting grid. Towards the end of the season, both guys at different times took a penalty. Verstappen ended up starting 20th in the race and finishing second because of his penalty. I believe Hamilton went from 10th to 1st with the penalty. That shouldn't, from my understanding, that's kind of new. That kind of dominance is not what happens in F1. Granted, I am brand new to the sport, but these two guys were like watching Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson racing NFLers. If you saw with DK Metcalf, all due respect to DK Metcalf, fast as
a big touchdown
the wind.
Today too.
But not as fast as lightning. And it was that kind of difference where it's like, oh, those guys are good. These guys are different.
Yeah. It's like the line from Rocky 3. It's like, you fight great, but I'm a great fighter. So, but okay. Yeah. Basically another F1 season's in the books. You will go into your sophomore year of experience with it. No sophomore jinx if you can help it. But no, I mean, listen, listen, you knew it was going to come down to one of those two anyway. It's even, I think you saw this back in, I mean, heck, you could say June, maybe even May, depending. You saw it was going to be those two neck and neck for the entire run through the summer and into the winter. So this doesn't surprise really anybody at all, including us. But a little bit of it, there was a little bit of whining going on at the end of it. So, all right. So, by the way, okay, go ahead. Dude.
And also, both of these drivers are still pretty. Verstappen is only 24, but since he started so young, it feels like he's already a veteran. And Hamilton's been around a little longer, but I believe still in his prime. So you're looking at these two probably dominating F1 for a while.
Another 10 years.
This wasn't just a one-off thing. These are two drivers in the primes of their careers, and it's just them versus everybody else. Will other drivers step up to try and join them? We will see.
In all due time, they will. Somebody will come up the pipeline, but the matter is always when, not if. But yeah, you're looking at 5, possibly 10 years of rivalry going between these two. Now, Verstappen went on record to say that the hostility that he had during the season is diminished somewhat due to the fact the season's over, which makes sense, But again, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year when that rivalry gets renewed, because again, in this case, Hamilton lost the title. He was won 3 years in a row, and now he's not. Now he lost one, so there's going to be added drive, pun marginally intended there, for him to get back to the number one spot. So, all right, so we are about 10 minutes, almost 11 minutes in at this point. Find us always at SSW Sports Den, Spanglish Sports World Sports Den on Twitter, and Spanglish World Sports Den on Facebook and Instagram. SSW Sports Den on Twitter, and yeah, there we go. So, not my smoothest one on that, but I'll deal with it. I did want to kind of segue away a little bit before we get into the NFL. I did want to talk about the world of MLS. Now, JD, you and I were watching the game the other day. Obi, I know you've been following this from the Philadelphia perspective. I want to talk about this from the perspective of the New York City area. Now, I was at the NYCFC, successfully finished their Cinderella season and won the MLS Cup for the first time in their history. In this New York City area, and you guys are South Jersey, no one here really knew about it or even cared about it. It is by definition, they said it during the speeches today, this is the first time that any team in New York has won any kind of national championship since 2012, when it was the Giants. You've got 8 different teams in New York, if you include the Islanders in this case, and not include the Rangers or the Devils. And then, of course, you have NYCFC making 9. But surprisingly enough, a lot of people in this area don't even realize that they had a soccer team, let alone follow it. When I was there today, basically the press box, thank you, Eduardo and Spanglish Sports World, appreciate that. The only news outlets that I saw covering the event were ABC and News 12 the Bronx. I did not see NBC. I did not see Fox. I did not see CBS. For that matter, I also didn't see CNN, MSNBC. I saw none of that. I saw one local news outlet that was actually literally the city where the team plays, and one decently sized outlet in ABC. And I have to wonder, in this case, ABC broadcast the game. Does that have something to do with the fact they were there? I don't know.
Probably.
But to show how little interest there is in this sport in this area, it's a disappointing factor to see a team that busted their butts the entire season and basically had a crowd of about 1,000 fans show up tonight. Now, the reason it was 1,000 fans is because there was very limited space. They sold out tickets in about 8 minutes, by my understanding. And it was actually at City Hall. No parade of heroes, nothing down the streets of Manhattan or anything like that. But it says a lot to MLS in this area and what soccer means to the U.S. as of right now. And it's disappointing, to see a team that finally gets over the hump and gets New York City a title. And people are like, we have a soccer team? And I don't know where it goes from here. And I do know that the fans booed royally when they were talking about, we're in works basically right now to get, a new stadium for you guys because you are the champions. And you could listen to the fans be like, yeah, we've heard this rigmarole before, and they will never get any acceptance, I think, in this area until the Yankees decide to pony up the money necessarily for a new stadium. But they don't want to pony up the money for the stadium because the fans aren't there. Meat chicken, meat egg. And I do not know when and if this team will ever become relevant and what it needs to have in this area to make that happen. So, thoughts?
So,
a baseball lockout might help.
Could.
New York City has always been a baseball and football town. Yes, there's 9 professional sports teams across the of the Big Four, 11 if you count the soccer teams between New York City, Long Island, and New Jersey. 11 sports teams, plus major college teams, and plus everything else in New York City. It's just there's only so much attention to go around. Heck, even the NBA and NHL get short shrift these days with New York coverage.
Which is shocking to me.
They don't, listen to the fan on any given day. They'll talk about baseball off-season stuff and how much the Giants and Jets stink before they'll talk about any of the other professional sports teams in town, NBA or NHL included. They might talk about the Nets a little bit, then but nothing about soccer,
Mhm.
nothing about hockey aside from an occasional mention of the Rangers or Islanders. The Devils barely exist. College basketball, there was a national we have a team in New Jersey that is ranked number 16 in the country. In
Mhm.
the last two games, they had a game against the other big college program from in New Jersey, and they beat the number 7 ranked team in the country. There was some juice in local papers, but really not that much coverage
Mhm.
around. There was for the Texas Seton Hall game
Mhm.
on Thursday night, which you would think would be for Fox Sports One would
Mhm.
be their major product. The Big East is the main product when it comes to winter sports and basketball season. They had remote announcers for a game featuring two top 25
Mhm.
five teams and sold out and was electric in the building. But you couldn't tell from the TV broadcast because they had remote announcers from LA. So this isn't just a soccer problem. There's plenty of attention to go around. There's plenty of media outlets of both old and new around.
Mhm.
Why isn't there more love being spread around instead of throwing more good attention after the bad for two garbage football teams that don't deserve it and two
Because
baseball teams which aren't even playing?
my theory is it's because of the fact that they draw ratings.
Exactly.
With NYCFC, Red Bulls. By the way, if the Mets are if they're on SNY. If any reason the Mets are playing, then they switch over to SNY Plus or whatever that is. In New Jersey they have like channel 60 for one and 61 for the other, so they'll just flip to the next network. For NYCFC, and I've been all over Reddit for this kind of stuff. The games by default go on the Yes Network. Fine. If the Yankees are playing or the Nets are playing, then it gets relegated only to the Yes app. There is no Yes 2. There's a small little section of basically Queens that gets a Yes 2 network. But other than that, you have to actually get it through the app and watch it this way. If blackout rules do not block the app from being played in your area, people in the Bronx, people in Manhattan, people in Queens have the app and can't watch the games because of blackout restrictions and whatever is legally going on with where it's being broadcast. Now, the Yankees own 20% of NYCFC. They play at Yankee Stadium. I'm going to be writing an article, and basically, Eduardo and I talked earlier today. I've got to have it up by noon tomorrow. But I've already tentatively said, okay, Yankees, the soccer ball is in your court. About what are you guys going to do now to give this team the credibility and recognition it deserves? Excuse me. For frankly, what was a very impressive up and in some cases down season that ended with the first title in the team's history and the first championship in New York City in a decade. What are the Yankees going to do now? I'm
It's
going to say
also
they're probably nothing. So,
sorry. You mentioned the Yankees own 20%. I
correct.
actually read today who owns the other 80%. Manchester City.
Mm-hmm. Also, another point. And
So
Eddie Hot
so
is the primary sponsor.
right. So it is. I don't think it's so much a Yankees decision as it is a Manchester City decision.
Mm.
And regarding the broadcasts, I'm very surprised that they don't have some sort of local TV deal. Down here, the Union have a local TV deal with PHL 17, and
Mm-hmm.
they do quite well with the TV
Well,
ratings.
but you guys
All
have a
right,
fan
so
base down there. You guys have a
I'm gonna,
nice
I'm
fan
gonna,
base.
I'm gonna barge my way in here now
Please,
Mhm.
just shove it
because
right in.
I'm gonna look on the bright side of this because I think you're trying to talk about history here and you're not talking about how things are obviously changing. Because first of all, growing up, soccer was a second tier sport, and participants in it were looked upon in high school as the lesser athletes, even if they were not necessarily the individuals who were lesser athletes. Now,
Yes.
25, 30 years later, ABC is there. But
Mhm.
ABC means that at least for 10 seconds on Sports Center tonight, that that press conference will be announced that NYC won because ABC is going to put it on ESPN, which is important. It's going to get the most likely fans to follow. Now, I know, Scott, you and I had different opinions on this pregame.
It's okay. You're allowed to be wrong. I don't mind that.
But I think that you and other soccer fans missed out on the benefit of that college basketball game running long.
Oh, I understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, because that kept eyes going, well, I'm going to watch this game. Now I'm not going to change to another game because it's already 15 minutes in. Let me see what this soccer game is about. So I think that game also. Now, finally, you're right. It's also a New York problem because I saw those fans in Portland in that crap-ass weather. They meant business. I know Union fans up and down the block here in Philly. So it's a New York
I was situation. There a week and a half ago.
But I do have one friend from the New York metro area who watched the game, posted before you did about the results on Facebook, beat you by seconds. So there are small, like you said, there's a small pocket, and those fans are enthusiastic. So how do you do better? You keep winning. Now, can you keep winning? I don't know. The way you've made it sound to me is they beat Philly because Philly was sick, but they beat Portland on their own. There was no Portland's all ill. So you got to keep winning. That's how you're going to build up the following. And as JD mentioned earlier, we're going to probably see soccer have a door opened up for it with at least some baseball stoppage. And a team ownership like the Yankees, who are not getting money, are going to push people to go and be like, well, I'm not getting money from baseball. Let's line our pockets a little bit. Go ahead, get to our stadium, play here. Make sure you go to the stadium, play here. Make sure you go to the stadium. So I think
prime spots on the U.S. network too. There's only so many reruns that you can show.
Yankee Classic of insert year here.
Yeah,
and you might have something there. I mean, like I said, I do have the belief that soccer is growing in popularity. Baseball is waning. We've discussed that as well. But I'm looking at it from this perspective, and like I said, this area, that the only reason that they would be getting more credibility in this area is because of the fact that, there will be a baseball stoppage. So during the spring, you're out two predominant sports right there. Whether that makes a difference for either New York-ish soccer team remains to be seen. But like I said, what I saw today and what I've been following this team the entire season, I see much more impassioned fans in other cities. I was talking to the radio guys today, who made the trip to Portland, and just think we saw the energy. We felt the energy. And it's like, we don't really have that here. Go ahead.
I just wanted to fix your pun from before. And I know you don't like me calling you out, but you said the ball's in your court. Let's get that right. Let's use pitch on that when you write that article.
Yeah, but see, the ball on your pitch is the phrase, though. The ball's in your pitch might be. I'm looking at it like the soccer ball was kind of the joke of it. But but the phrase is the ball is in your court. So I'm kind of like, I mean, I get where you're coming from.
I think you got to go all in. I think you got to go all in with the punt. You got to go.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do, because I'm a nice guy here. So what else am I going to do for you? Me, I'm going to change the title of that article to "Okay, Yankees, the soccer ball is in your pitch." And I'm going to basically make a quote maybe at the end of the pitch there. And I don't know why I'm talking like this, but I'm going to do you a solid there, right? Because you're my boy. You're my boy. Okay, fine. But like I said, I was looking at it really from the perspective of too many jokes in the punchline stuff. But again, I'm out of mind because it comes down to, what are the Yankees going to do here? Was this one of those really bizarre situations where it's almost like the end of the first major league movie where you hope the team tanks so you can do something with it? I don't know. But the NYCFC, they got a few breaks along the way. You played a top-seeded team that had 23 days of rest and were not solid. You played a team that was overrun with COVID. And then, that was a straight-up slugfest over the weekend in Portland. But if the first two changed a little bit, and I talked to some of the sports guys today, if the first two didn't happen, they probably don't win those games. If COVID did not hit Philadelphia, with NYCFC being down Tati Castellanos and the rest of the people that they had out, Philly should have won that game.
The Union wiped the floor with them at full strength.
Oh, yes. I 100% agree.
And one thing to watch next year is that the Red Bulls have been the Union's main rival from the beginning.
It's going to change now.
NYCFC will be the next big one.
I heard the fans
They
there the
quote,
other day.
not even just the fans, the coaches.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
Jim Curtin was really salty after that
dude. Yeah.
and I don't know if I can, where he said that basically just that he basically implied they only won because they're sick. They're just a farm team for Manchester City, and all they have is oil money from their owners. Whoa, shots
Yeah,
fired.
I was going to say.
That's going to be a very intense rivalry next
Well, like I said, I was there when the fans that had not left in unbridled disgust when New York was getting the trophy in Philadelphia, the remaining ones were very vocal and said all sorts of words, akin to fudge and poop, and well, Bic and added T. Bic, by the way, is Latin for the French word, or Latin for the word generosity. Thank you, South Park.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was all kinds of words that I can't say here that they absolutely said there. But Philly's got a Philly, and you know what? Respect for the passion there. But yes, at this point, New York City is going to, at this point, have a massive, massive target on its back going in next year, because there would be the defending champions, and they had a Cinderella season.
Yeah, and you mentioned the local media coverage. I also read an athletic article the other day before the game that for the past several years, the league office has instructed all of the teams to not extend their local TV contracts past the 2022 season. So that means MLS is trying to set something up for a larger national deal, which
Mhm.
might come with that should hopefully have more games being broadcast in more places for the whole league,
Well,
including NYCFC. So,
supposedly there's going to be a full out Pumas league that I've been hearing about. So the Pumas league here was like 4 teams from Mexico, 4 teams from here, and then they started out best of 8, but they're looking to do a full out hardcore 64 like a March Madness kind of a thing, and really just like 32 Mexican teams, 32 U.S. teams, and just go at it kind of thing. That kind of stuff I think is good for credibility, good for the energy here, but. Yeah, if they can actually start to solidify some kind of a better major deal, and something that doesn't involve, like I said, having to watch a New York City soccer team, your champion team, on an app only, and an app being subject to whether or not it works or not, which is, like I said, its own problem, and relegating your team to, as a secondary option, if the Yankees are playing, to have to play in New Jersey at a division rivals stadium. I went to so many Red Bull games, or so many games at Red Bull Arena covering the New York City Football Club. They would get less than 3,000 fans at those games because New York City people don't travel to Jersey. There was one game, the attendance was 2,875. You can't get good cred when you got a team that's doing that.
it's hard to. Winning is supposed to cure that. Going into next season, and also the awkwardness of attendance at a lot of sporting events with COVID coming out of COVID shutdowns and all. So that was hard to gauge across the board.
Those numbers come out to be about 1/5 of what or 1/4 to 1/5 of what they would average to draw in New York.
And also just the fact that when you're playing in a baseball stadium, and even if you have 20,000 people there, it will, in a stadium that holds 45, 50,000, it looks empty.
Yeah. I saw that same problem with Tropicana Field when they closed down the upper tier.
Yep. Same kind of deal.
Yeah. But now there's rumors that NYCFC is going to have a secondary option in Citi Field next year. So they can at least
another baseball stadium.
But
it's better than crossing the river.
It's a 7 train, and it's not like the path to Harrison and have to bridge it and tunnel for a lot of these New Yorkers. Me personally, I much preferred parking at Yankee Stadium than trying to go to Harrison. And I live here, obviously, like 20 minutes from either one of them. But again, you get when it's pretty bad when basically the broadcast announcers, in this case Ian Joy, as impassioned as he is, he's like, you cannot actually have your team play in your division rival stadium. You can't have the Giants play in Philadelphia. You can't have the Cowboys play in Philadelphia.
Well, it sounds like it was basically the equivalent of what the Jets did for a long time, which is you play in a stadium named after another team, and you just put up green posters over everything being red and blue on
That's
game
pretty
day,
much what happened here. Yeah.
which just looks pathetic. That's why the compromise was building the largest air conditioning unit in the world and dropping it in a parking lot, devoid of any kind of character whatsoever. And that's
Yeah.
MetLife Stadium.
MetLife Stadium is one of the most hated football stadiums in the country. We should probably do a show on that, like most hated and most liked stadiums nationwide. I really think it's not a bad idea. But like I said, it's going to remain to be seen. But for today, success. I mean, it was a good turnout for what they were able to do. The requisite speeches, which were okay and everything like that. But the fans gave it life and they gave it energy and they had passion. And the players, to their credit, were taking 1,000 selfies and signing everything. The players were as much fired up about this as well. I mean, I ended up taking a selfie of homegrown player Tavon Gray because a bunch of people from the area wanted pictures. So I'm sitting there taking pictures of all of them, and it was really, really interactive between the players and the fans, and I think that's a huge thing there. And I've said this before, that's what sets soccer and some of the other sports apart from some of the higher end stuff, where you have more of a disconnect. Here, it's just like, let's go for it.
I mean, the numbers being what they are, it's sort of akin to. I mean, with MLS in general, especially with a team like NYCFC, where it's a different feeling, kind of getting in on the ground floor, if you will, of a startup versus trying to join, big corporate conglomerate that's been around forever. That is the whole feeling that MLS has versus the NFL and the other major sports.
For now. And like I said, let's see what happens in the next coming year. So I'm going to wrap this up unless you guys have any final thoughts. Okay. So cool. So we are now at the 32-minute mark and about 23 minutes left. I think we've got enough time at this point to discuss a little NFL. For those of us that are fans of Gang Green and Big Blue, well, there's always next year. For the other green team in the area, mathematically and statistically, you still got a decent shot. But, Obi, where would you like to start in the NFL arena if you've got something? Okay.
Alrighty.
By the way, Obi is actually doing his best miming impersonation or pantomiming.
I would like to start with the NFC. We knew there were 5 teams that were above everybody else: Cowboys, Cardinals, Rams, Packers, Tampa Bay. But I think we can finally start to see some separation in the AFC, and that's kind of exciting to me. The Patriots, we were kind of on a couple of weeks ago. The Chiefs, ever since they beat the Giants, are like, are they for real? Are they for real now? I'm like, yes, they are for real. The Titans still keep winning games despite having lost Henry, so I'm believing in them. So they've developed a nice little threesome of teams that are a little step above everybody else. And I think that middle pack is great with the Bills and the Chargers and the Browns and the Bengals. Any one of those teams, I think, is also competitive. And as I said earlier, I think this Charger-Chief game is so big. I'd like the winner of that game to get to the Super Bowl. I really do. I think that game is really going to be the statement game. The Chargers for the winner of that, and it will be my pick for the Super Bowl until the following week when something else changes my mind.
It's your pick for the Super Bowl.
That's where it's been this year. Is that every week it's different. I mean, we were just talking recently. I believe somewhere we were talking about how the Cardinals are the team to beat. Yep. Well, the Rams just took care of that last night. So is that even the case anymore? Matt Stafford, who has an all-time 106 winning percentage against teams over 500.
It's gone up now, though.
It's now gone up for beating the best team in the league. By record.
Yeah.
And that's before you even get in other teams, like the Packers, like the Cowboys, which I still don't know what to make out of the Cowboys as far as their playoff chances. I mean, yes, they win the division. Yes, they probably win a playoff game. Are they Super Bowl material? I don't even know. What about the wild card teams? The wild card teams in the NFC are mediocre to the point where the Eagles and where Washington is in the final spot, and the Eagles are only a game behind them, playing them twice in the next 4 weeks. So there's still a chance there. I mean, you're seeing some separation, but you don't see any with 14 playoff teams. There really in the middle of the pack, there hasn't been a lot of separation yet. You're starting to see a little bit at the top, but not that much, because even then, that changes week to week. The Titans lost to the Jets, so that shows you enough about and there's been plenty of back and forth all across the league. It is a league of parity or mediocrity, depending on how you look at it. I think it's a bit of both.
But I think what's neat about this season is the fact that it is, especially on the wild card side of it, there are obviously 3 wild card spots, but there are 6, 7 teams on each side that are still realistically, in contention. I'm not talking like the 5 and 8 teams, but I think we looked at it. There's like 5 teams, I think, in the NFC that all have a 6 and 7 record right now. And that kind of 5 or 6 teams, whatever the number is, and then on the AFC side, you've got, like 7 or 8 teams that are 1 game apart from one another. So it's interesting on both sides of that equation where it's going to come right down to the end of the season. I was not a big fan of the additional wild card spot. I was never a big fan of a lot of the changes that they made. I wasn't a fan of that when baseball added a second wild card either. But I am becoming that way now because it is a lot more interesting to see what teams are able to do and what they can make happen, given, like I said, the fact that it is going to probably go down all the way to the end to week 18, and you're going to have 3 or 4 or 5 teams on each side still in legitimate contention.
And also at this point of the season, it just becomes a battle of attrition. It seems like half the league is injured. And we still have 4 more weeks to go. I mean, this is usually how it goes when you get to the end of any NFL season. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And,
sorry.
Yeah, and this doesn't really, we still have 4 more weeks of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just who is the last healthy team standing is what this comes down to. And adding in an extra week just to the season just makes that even worse.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some teams like, so for instance, who are the Cowboys? We laughed at them, but we forget that while they were having their struggles, Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, 2 guys who are number 1 wide receivers on any team, let alone both on the same team, were both out of the game. And Lawrence and Gregory were both out on the defensive side. Well, Dak isn't looking great, but that defense looks phenomenal with Lawrence and Gregory both playing. Talk is Micah Parsons is not only a defensive rookie year, maybe defensive player of the year. So you got that kind of thing going on. So you have one team, maybe they're getting healthy. So if someone else goes down, nope. So you're 100% to that point is talk to me when the playoffs begin, who's healthy. And then to Scott's point, I don't know if I like it or don't, but now that number 1 seed is the only team with the bye. So that number 2 seeded team has 1 more game to play, 1 more chance for a lineman whose name you don't know, but is so much better than the guy behind them to get hurt. And then you watch a quarterback that you thought was all world can't get a pass off because Aaron Donald is doing what he did last night. I mean, Aaron Donald's first play and the last play of the game were sacks, and in between, all we did was say,
middle too.
all we did was say, "Oh, there's Aaron."
And it's also been so much sloppy play, so many penalties. Where I mean, it's weird because like the league is on one point more exciting than ever, especially with the more playoff spots and the extra games. Yet with the injuries and the penalties and all, it's also the quality of play seems down as well. It's strange.
I got to wonder if basically the penalties across the board have been up too.
It feels that way.
And some of that I think comes from COVID starts and stops and COVID protocols and practices and all might have some effect on that. Players who sat out last season and didn't do much in the off season, kind of getting back up to speeds, that plays a hand in some of the injuries as well, I believe. So it's still kind of trying to figure itself out. Anyway, the playoffs will be just as awesome as ever. Just now we're kind of in the slog towards the end of the season where part of me is, maybe it's just because I'm a fan of a terrible team, where it's just like, wow, we have 4 more weeks of this.
Yeah. And well, hey, at least you have a starting quarterback.
Giants,
who knows what the Giants have these days?
I'm not so sure about that. All 3 backups the Jets have looked better than Wilson. That comes down to
But
Josh
still,
Johnson.
Wilson's the starter until he's not.
Right. But
I mean, you can't take the job
I'm
from
not
him
that
yet.
impressed with Wilson. Like Mike White came out of nowhere when Wilson got hurt. You
Mhm,
also had Flacco and Josh Johnson even
mhm.
for stretches of a few games where he had to come in when White was hurt, and they all look like more competent NFL players than Wilson to an extent.
Well, they have more
But that
experience.
line is so bad. Who really tells? The defense gives up 30 plus points every game. So, what does it matter? It like just there's so little hope for both teams. The Jets might have a little bit of hope. I don't even see where hope is with the Giants. The Giants are in the same "what do we do now" position with Jones that the Jets were with Donald last year.
Speaking of offensive line, I don't
And
know
there's the Eagles. Yep.
how good Sewell Powell is doing, where he is standing. I don't know. Obviously, Cincinnati didn't take him, and Chase looks great. But I am pretty convinced that the MVP this season is Quentin Nelson. Every week I see highlights of that guy just blocking like 3 people with one arm and not holding, and then pancaking 2 other guys. Quentin Nelson for MVP. I mean, I don't know how else they're protecting Wentz, and just wow.
I will be.
He's not going to get it. He's not going to get it though.
We won't get it, but I'm bitter about that because I was saying in the 2018 draft, I said the Jets should stay at the 6th pick and take Nelson and fix the line. Instead, they trade up for Darnold, and we see how that went. If you look up all of the picks that the Jets gave up in that trade was hilariously bad. For all of the talent that the Colts were able to stock up on, and the Jets had to do it all over again a few years later. And far as I'm concerned, are probably going to end up doing the same thing. These organizations, Giants included on this, are so completely toxic from top to bottom, where everybody who comes in there just goes down the tubes.
It's lather, rinse, and repeat, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, from the Giants' perspective, Daniel Jones is out because of a significant neck injury that hasn't really been defined exactly how bad it is. And head coach Joe Judge is like, it's not that bad, it's not permanent. We'll have to see. That's what a coach is supposed to say.
And then Glennon right behind him with a concussion.
Yeah, doesn't say he had a concussion, was cleared for protocol, and of course that went nowhere. I mean, then they had a Jake Fromm, who a lot of the fans are like, start him, because you know what have we got to lose at this point? This whole team is going nowhere. And then next season, do they get Russell Wilson? I mean, I've talked for a while that there is no intimidating presence on that. It's going to be weird the way I'm going to say this, but the Jets had Rex Ryan. You had that impassioned, fired up. You need an impassioned, fired up person. Rex Ryan, although a coach, was kind of that guy. He got a little lampooned after a while. We're going to win this game. We're going to crush this game. And he lose 42-14. But you at least had somebody with passion and drive and fire. The Giants have none of that right now. And they need somebody who has that. Daniel Jones is a nice kid. But a nice kid's not going to succeed when there's no badass characters on there.
The Jets also have Robert Saleh now, who's, as far as I'm concerned, is basically, he's getting to a point where he's Rex 2.0, except not even good. There was actually some shade thrown between them where people were comparing the two of them, and
I think I heard that, yeah.
But Rex said, yeah, we actually made it to AFC Championship games and had all-world defense, but there was also way more talent on those. So he basically Rex was basically insulted by being compared to Saleh, and I understand why. Because the track record is, Jets fans are already starting to turn on Saleh, and I don't blame them because
they're turning on Wilson too.
Yeah, well, because Wilson has been terrible, and the 3 backups have been playing better. You have a rookie quarterback. You also have a coaching staff of all rookies, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coach. All have never been in those positions before. You have a head coach who talks in stupid cliches and selling merchandise with all gas, no brake on them, but can't actually coach a team or make any kind of in-game adjustments. These teams are not worth our time. It's just disgusting from top to bottom.
But they dominate the headlines.
The Giants also have a hive mind where they run their organization in an old school way, but like in a bad old school way, where where it seems like everybody that's works in the Giants front office has worked for the Giants for most of their career. There is no outside perspective when the player personnel department is literally related to the ownership. Um, just the Giants need fresh perspectives in the organization.
But it's never been their perspective. It's never been their persona to do something like that.
Right. And this is a repeat of the bad old days of the 70s for the Giants, where the last time they went through a lot of these same issues where they were stuck in the past and the league had passed them by and they went 18 years without going anywhere near the playoffs. Like to the point where the owners weren't talking to each other and the league had to get involved and, suggest George Young to hire as the first real general manager to be the go-between between two owners who were related to each other and didn't talk.
Still hated each other anyway. Yeah. And obviously that worked out really well in the long run, at least for the legacy of the team. But
yeah, well,
good.
Yeah, just now you have two families with issues because because the Tisch family came in and bought out the other Mara's side. So now you have Mara's and the Tisches who, like, yes, they get along as well as you can for billionaires, owning a shared team. But like, there's you can even see some behind the scenes stuff with them too. But it's the same people from the Mara and Tisch families that have been running the pro personnel department for decades. Yeah. They keep bringing in the same few they stick with general managers for too long.
And
you need outside perspective of how things work elsewhere in the league.
If the ticket sales start to drop, I think that happens. But those ticket sales are not going to drop anytime soon for either team. So there's no real motivation to force a change.
Yet aren't they both in the bottom
tickets
five?
On back order for how long now for both teams? Those season
decades.
Tickets are not flowing forever.
I don't know about the Jets, but the Giants are decades.
But also a lot of that backlog, that legendary Giants backlog, a lot of that actually has dwindled. Where a lot of fans are just saying this garbage isn't worth it anymore and giving up their tickets. Especially when you factor in the PSLs. It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot to continue for the teams that are this bad year in and year out. The Devils are also starting to fall into this category. It's a lot and the Knicks as well for years. But the Knicks don't care because their corporate seats that are bought out, that are sold no matter what. The Giants are kind of falling into the same thing. But it's a lot to ask the average fan to keep putting out lots and lots of money for tickets for teams when they clearly don't care. Of how the organization is run. The players are always going to, try their best, when they can, because their jobs and livelihoods are on the line. But the organizational culture is rotten.
Yeah, and welcome to sports in New York. But see, that's why we have the Devils to live with. You have, you are in Eagles country, so you can switch a little bit if you have to. You become a 76ers fan too if you want. Join Obi, start going to 76ers games.
Oh my God, no! Please don't do that to yourself. You want to talk about the Sixers?
You mean the team that signed a point guard who can't shoot a jump shot to a $175 million contract, and then he doesn't bother showing up to practice or games? Yeah.
But anyway, we got about 5 minutes left at this point. Like I said, you can find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and Spanglish World Sports Den on both Facebook and Instagram as well. So in the remaining 5 minutes, I could throw another thought in if needs be. But do you guys have any final thoughts that you want to roll with? Any comments on anything else? Anything that's grinding your gears or anything like that? Go for it.
Grinding your gears. Funny how you use grinding your gears, and I started off with F1. But
I was trying to pull the line from Family Guy in this case. I was trying to pull it on the fly, but
that's okay. I like the grinding gears. No, I'm good. I don't want to go on a 76ers rant. It's not Christmas, but starting the new year, I will be all about what is wrong with the 76ers.
Because your basketball season starts in about a week too, a little over a week.
Yeah.
My basketball season has And
Yes.
for all of these points, I choose to focus more on college basketball. You have if you're talking about about the local area between New York, New Jersey, and Philly, you have the Nova powerhouse. Seton Hall is now right up there with them. Ranked more often than not. They're number 16 in the country. They've beaten multiple top 10 teams. They beat the number 4 team. At the time, Michigan on the road. They beat Texas, who was number 7 last Thursday. And then they beat Rutgers pretty handily. Rutgers themselves coming off a victory against the number 1 team in the country in Purdue a few nights before. So college basketball has a lot more entertainment value and, frankly, better teams, locally than than the and all this happening before the true start of the NBA season on Christmas.
Well, how far is the Prue Center from you, roughly? Hour and a half, one way?
Depends on traffic. It's about hour 40.
Okay. All right. So almost what I had to do when I went to Subaru Park last weekend. So
I live very close to Subaru Park, so there you go.
Yeah. But like I said, respect to that fan base and everything like that. So yeah, for me, I mean, it's being a New Jersey fan in general is tough, because we always have to live in the shadow of New York City. Even when there's success here, it's over. Even when the Devils were in the playoffs year after year, when they had 3 trips to the Stanley Cup Finals in 4 years, the Rangers were still a priority. I remember being shocked when ABC announced the Devils winning the Stanley Cup as part of the start of their news program on ABC. The night the Devils won Game 7 in the 2003 Stanley Cup Finals, ABC News led with New Jersey Devils. That's what it took to get a Jersey team to be recognized by New York, because when you're here, you're second class.
Yes.
And that's where I think some of the issues come from. I got trashed. Not trashed, but I got dissed a little bit last week, for my, being in New Jersey while actually at that moment being in Brooklyn. And it was kind of funny because it's the general order of things where New Jersey is like that red-haired stepchild to, New York City, New York State, because there's a prestige factor to New York. There's, a respectability. You got the Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, technically. We can go into that one at some point too, but you got all of that. And then over there in Jersey, you got tomatoes inbreeding in Jersey Shore. So that's what we've got. That's what we're known for. So,
New Jersey and Delaware are the only places in the country that do not have a major TV station based there, because they're sandwiched between New York and Philly.
And Delaware obviously would help to have Washington or Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah, it's sandwiched between Philly and Baltimore.
So is Delaware the poor man's New Jersey, or is New Jersey the poor man's Delaware?
No.
I feel
New Jersey is a state, and if I recall my Wayne and Garth properly, we're in Delaware.
We're in Delaware. Yeah. Yes. Kids, by the way, Wayne's World was a comedic skit that was originally on SNL and then eventually moved over to 2 highly successful movies that, continued the SNL franchise, the SNL direct-to-movie franchise, them and Blues Brothers arguably being the most famous of the bunch. So, but kids nowadays would look at the 2 old guys doing the Grubhub commercial and like, who are these people? So, all right. I figure that's going to probably wrap it up on us. One more time, you can always find us on Instagram and also on Facebook at Spanglish World Sports Den, and also on Twitter at SSW Sports Den. Mr. JD Walker over there, Mr. Obie Spencer down there. This has been the Sports Den. Tune in at 7:00 tonight for Tales from the Film Set, when myself, Ryan, JT, and Rob break down Spider-Man Homecoming, the struggles and failures so far, despite the great reviews of West Side Story. Plus, maybe if we got a little bit of time, previewing The Matrix and Keanu Reeves' general awesomeness. So anyway, have a good night. Take care. And as always, be awesome. Is this like kind of like one of those things from like the original Police Squad, where they're all standing frozen while action's still happening around them? What the hell is going? Okay, so anyway, continuing on. By the way, let me just put a note down at the bottom. You can close anytime. We're just stalling. So anyway, so do you guys watch the latest episode of Star Wars? Okay, so let's see.
There it is. Whoop, there it is.
So anyway, basically, Obi, I did want to at least point out, since we're going on to expanded random time here, I do dig the hat and the watch combination. I just want to point that out. And
Thank
JD,
you.
what's the flag over your left shoulder? I actually just meant to ask that too.
It's actually a Seton Hall flag.
Oh, respect. Okay, so
Yeah. There we go.
so nice. So Seton Hall, basically the school that you all went to.
In my Mets bat mug. Mhm.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I see the bat. No, the Mets logo. By the way, your old pal Rich Maxey was the one that knocked me out of a playoff spot in fantasy football. So I needed a bunch of points yesterday from Kyler Murray, and he had Odell Beckham, and I lost. And as a result, I'm missing the playoffs once again in his fantasy league for like the 4th year in a row. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Baton Rouge,
so
Louisiana,
here you go. Would you
Appleton
say
game.
an 8-point game
Mhm.
in football is a 1-point game, or is it an illusion and actually a 2-point game?
I would say 2.
Or 2-score game.
I would say it's 2. You get the guaranteed 6. The 1, you can basically make the argument that it was going to happen. 94% success for it. So, okay. So anyway, we're going to wrap this up now that basically Eduardo has been taking care of business every day, taking care of business. So anyway, have a good night. Eduardo, you can close out at any